the pregnancy reveal. I was over the moon, until a doctor's timeline quietly shattered. I didn't know it was possible for a Tuesday morning to feel like fireworks. We weren't doing anything special. No grand gestures, no Instagrammable backdrop. Just toothpaste foam, coffee breath, and my girlfriend Mia, standing in our tiny bathroom like she was trying to make herself smaller than the doorway. She had the test in her hand, turned face down on a folded towel, like it might get embarrassed if it made eye contact. "We should check it together," she said, which, in hindsight, is its own kind of foreshadowing. At the time, I just thought it was sweet. We flipped it over the way you flip a coin you've already decided the outcome of. 2 lines. 2 undeniable universe-rewriting lines. I laughed first. Not a normal laugh, not a polite laugh. The ugly, relieved kind. The kind you let out when something you've been half afraid to want actually shows up. She cried. This little shoulder-shaking cry that made me want to wrap the entire bathroom around her, like a blanket. We hugged. We said all the dumb, wonderful things people say. I put my palm gently on her belly, even though biology hadn't had time to assemble a single cell into anything you could call there. We stood like that for a minute. That felt like 3 hours. We weren't trying in the scheduled spreadsheet way. But we also weren't not trying. We'd had the talk. We were 31 and 29. We'd been living together for 2 years, together for 3.5. The big fights were behind us. The quiet routines were good ones. Our work lives were intact enough to handle a curveball. We'd walked past baby clothes in Target and let ourselves linger. We'd seen friends become parents and do okay, even when they weren't okay. In other words, the ground was ready. I called in late to work. She called in late to work. We made a breakfast that looked like we were trying to impress a brunch crowd. Scrambled eggs with too much milk. Toast burned twice because we were distracted by kissing in the kitchen. Strawberries we pretended were a metaphor for spring. Every conversation ricocheted back to this new secret like a magnet. Names we liked years ago came out of storage like boxes from a garage. Apartment logistics suddenly mattered. The second bedroom wouldn't be a guest room/office anymore. It would be a nursery that smelled like paint and baby lotion. I caught myself calculating months on my fingers and then laughed, because I had a phone that can do math, but also because doing it old school felt ceremonial. I didn't say this to her, but a reel started playing in my head. It wasn't elaborate. It was full of unremarkable things that, added together, looked like a life. Tiny socks in a laundry basket, me asleep on the couch with a baby sprawled on my chest, and a game muted on TV. Mia humming some nonsense tune while she poured oatmeal, a small hand pressed against a window, while rain made rivers on the glass. I'm not immune to the cliché. Sometimes clichés are just popular because they're right. We agreed to keep it quiet for a few weeks, not because we didn't want to shout it from the roof of our very unshoutable building, but because we both had friends who'd been through early losses, and we wanted to be careful. "Just us for a little while," Mia said, and we pinky swore like teenagers, which is embarrassing if you're not in love, and necessary if you are. I made a doctor's appointment for her with an OB my sister recommended. I set calendar reminders like I was onboarding a new project at work. I downloaded 2 apps, one glossy and cheerleadery, one blue and clinical, and learned more than anyone needs to know about fruit metaphors for embryonic development. Poppy seed, blueberry, raspberry, the produce aisle of hope. That night I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, from electricity. I kept getting up to look at the bathroom shelf where the test lay face down on the towel like a sleeping thing. I wanted to frame it. Then I told myself to be a normal person. Then I got up again and took a photo of the towel. Not the test, the towel. The scene. I told myself it wasn't the kind of thing you can show anyone, but it was the kind of thing you can look at when you need to remember the exact shape of a moment. We started micro-adjusting our lives the way people do when something big is coming down the track. Coffee down to 1 cup and then half. Her favorite wine pushed to the back of the cabinet. A sticky note on the fridge with a list titled "Soft Cheeses," because neither of us trusted our brains to remember which foods were suddenly contraband. I Googled how to be helpful in first trimester, and the internet said, in essence, be a thorough human, carry things, make food, shut up when she's nauseous, which I could do. The next weekend, I turned the second bedroom into something that looked like a decision had been made. I moved the desk into the corner, broke down the futon we pretended guests liked, spackled holes in the wall, patched paint badly. I ordered a small bookshelf I didn't need to order yet and set it up anyway, because the act of building something you can touch helps you believe in something you can't. I put 3 children's books on it, even though we didn't own any children. One was mine from when I was 5, rescued from a box in my mother's garage with my name in shaky marker on the inside cover. One was Mia's, a dog-eared copy with a ripped dust jacket she refused to tape because the rip is part of the story. The third I bought that afternoon at a store with a felt board sign that said, "Read to them, even when they can't hear you." I rolled my eyes and then bought 2 more. We didn't tell anyone, but we did tell one person. It was impossible not to. My sister called to ask if we wanted to come over for Sunday chili and football, and I said we couldn't because we had plans. And she said, "Your plans are usually me." And I laughed so hard she knew. She didn't say the word. She just said, soft, "Okay, I will pretend I don't know. And I will also leave a bag of saltines and ginger ale by your door when you're not home." I told her I loved her, and she said, "I know," like a cocky space pilot in a movie. 2 hours later, there was a bag by the door. Mia started getting the little symptoms first, like the body was whispering before it yelled. Tired in a way that looks like you're acting until you stand up and feel your joints complain. Nausea that was more like a constant low-level seasickness than the dramatic scenes TV taught us to expect. She apologized for being a buzzkill, which made me want to build a speech about how the buzz is the baby, and the baby is the buzz, and I don't care if the house is quiet as a church for 3 months, if it means she's okay. Instead, I rubbed her back while she breathed and fetched crackers like a butler. We saw the doctor 2 weeks later. The waiting room had that particular OB energy, a combination of tired and alert, people holding their bellies like they were hosting an event they wanted to go well. The walls were painted that neutral you pick when you want to offend no one and calm everyone. The receptionist had a warm, practiced smile that told me she had seen every version of good news and bad news and knew how to hold both in her face at once. Our doctor, Dr. Chen, was brisk in the comforting way, like a pilot who says, "Little turbulence," while the plane shakes. She asked the questions, took the history, congratulated us with a real smile, and then did the thing I had been both desperate for and afraid of: the first ultrasound. I squeezed Mia's hand while the room filled with gel and beeps. The machine looked like a prop from a medical drama. The screen lit up with static, and then a small gray shape that might as well have been a galaxy for how it made my chest feel. We didn't hear a heartbeat that day because it was early, but Dr. Chen pointed at the small flicker and said, "That's what we want to see." I nodded like a student who'd been chosen to answer a question and somehow got it right. Mia cried. I cried. Dr. Chen handed tissues like a magician pulling scarves from her sleeve and said, "Make sure you take a photo for yourselves," catching herself before saying, "grandparents," because she knows the waiting room math too. She also said a sentence that slid right past me in the moment, a sentence I filed under doctor words and only later realized was the quiet hinge the whole door swung on. She said, "Based on what I'm seeing, conception was likely around X date give or take a few days." She said it casually, almost apologetically, because bodies are not calendars, and I assume they give that caveat to everyone. Mia squeezed my hand again, and her thumb traced a tiny circle the way it does when she's soothing either me or herself. I can never tell which. I said something dumb like, "That's basically what we thought." And Dr. Chen nodded, printed a blurry photo that looked like a campfire at a distance, and told us the practical things. Prenatal vitamins, foods to avoid, call if there's heavy bleeding, come back in 3 weeks. We left the office high as kites. In the elevator, Mia laughed at nothing, the kind of laugh people do when they realize their face forgot how to stop smiling. I kissed the top of her head because I could reach it easily, and because the elevator camera made me feel oddly supervised. We bought a sleeve of plain bagels, like we'd been commissioned to test carbs. We went home, and Mia napped on the couch while I sat next to her and watched her chest rise and fall like the most riveting show ever produced. If you pause the story there, it's perfect. If you framed it there, you'd see 2 idiots on a couch in love with a smudge on glossy paper. If you play it 1 inch further, you see a calendar page turn, a date on a form, a sentence that won't stop echoing. That night, when she was asleep, I took the after-visit summary out of the folder. The form had a lot of normal lines: blood pressure, weight, notes I didn't understand. In the corner, it had an estimated date of conception. Medicine isn't a courtroom, but numbers do a lot of damage in casual contexts. I saw the date. I did the quick math. I felt, for the first time in weeks, the floor move a fraction, not a fall, a shift. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself, give or take a few days is the point. I told myself, humans are terrible at remembering what they did and when they did it, and that schedules and bodies rarely shake hands. I folded the paper back into the folder and put the folder in the drawer and told the drawer to behave. I lay down next to Mia and watched the streetlight paint a stripe across the ceiling. My brain started flipping through a calendar like a desperate accountant. I thought about the week in question, the specifics of it, the texture. I remembered a work trip that fell through. I remembered Mia's friend's birthday dinner that ran late. I remembered a fight we had about nothing that felt big because we were tired. I remembered a certain night that I had been sure was the night, not because of romance, but because of dumb, practical timing. And now the doctor's sentence nudged that certainty like a kid poking a sandcastle. I'm not proud of this, but I did what a lot of people do when their stomach drops and they don't want to scare the pilot. I stayed very still and pretended the seatbelt could hold the entire plane. I told myself mourning would make the math kinder. I told myself a date is a date is a date, except when it isn't, and that this was one of those isn'ts. Mourning didn't fix it. Sunlight just made the numbers easier to read. I made coffee and didn't drink it. I scrolled my phone like democracy depended on it. I put the folder back in the drawer and took it out again, as if the date might scoot itself politely to a different line while I wasn't looking. Mia shuffled into the kitchen, hair puffy. The oversized shirt of mine she sleeps in sliding off one shoulder like a deliberate choice, when it's really just a pajama accident. She put her head on my chest without words. We stood like that, the way people do when standing is the only thing you can manage. I kissed her forehead and said, "We have a blueberry." And she smiled, that slow, happy, sleepy smile, and said, "We have a blueberry." I clung to that line like a rope. I could do dates later. I could be a normal person now. So I did the normal person things. I ordered prenatal vitamins with free 2-day shipping that felt like an ethical decision. I bought a massive water bottle because one app said hydration could solve almost anything, and I believed it for the 15 minutes it takes an app to make a promise. I moved the test from the towel to a small box because no one tells you those tests fade, and I couldn't bear the idea of the lines losing their nerve. I changed my phone background to the blurry ultrasound that looks like nothing to anyone else and like proof of everything to me. If you want to know when the unease made the jump from background hum to a sound I couldn't ignore, it wasn't because of the date alone. It was because 2 days later, Mia looked at me over the top of her tea mug and said, with a weirdly deliberate brightness, "You know what's funny? I don't remember exactly when that week was." I said, "Which week?" Too fast. And she said, "That week," and stared into her mug like an answer might be in the leaves, even though it was a bag. I said, "Voice easy. Bodies are sloppy historians." She laughed, relieved to accept an excuse I offered. I laughed too, relieved she'd taken it. Then I went to the bedroom and sat on the floor next to the bookshelf I'd assembled for a baby and pressed my forehead to my knees. And, for the first time since the bathroom, let fear have a full minute. It passed, because fear does. It always passes. The problem is that it waits, patient as a cat, for another reason to reappear. We had our second appointment in 3 weeks. I told myself I could put a pin in the calendar math until then. The doctor would refine dates. She'd move the estimate 2 days this way or that, and the dangerous overlap would become a normal Venn diagram of life. I could breathe for 3 weeks. I could be the guy with a blueberry, and then a raspberry, and then a grape. I could carry bags and shut up during nausea and pick paint colors with names like Quiet Drizzle. I was so sure we were safe in the story I had started writing that I didn't see the real plot sneaking in from the margins, circling the dates on the calendar in a red pen I hadn't given it. The second appointment was supposed to be routine. By then, we were old pros at the waiting room shuffle. check in, sit with magazines no one actually reads, exchange glances with other couples, who are all at different chapters of the same story. Mia looked pale but excited. She wore a sweater she'd bought 2 years ago that she used to joke made her look like a kindergarten teacher. Now, it looked perfect. Exactly the kind of thing you picture on a pregnant woman in your imagination. I couldn't stop staring at her, half in disbelief that she was carrying this little secret universe inside her. Dr. Chen came in with the kind of efficiency that suggested she'd already seen 6 other expectant mothers that morning. She smiled, asked about nausea, sleep, diet. Mia answered, honest, but upbeat. Then it was ultrasound time again. The room dimmed, gel spread, wand pressed. The monitor flickered to life, and there it was. That same grainy storm cloud, but bigger now. More shape. More there. Then came the sound. A heartbeat. Fast and steady, like someone tapping a drum in another room. It was the most beautiful noise I'd ever heard. I squeezed Mia's hand so hard she winced. I whispered, sorry, but she just smiled, eyes wet. Dr. Chen congratulated us again, took some measurements, tapped a few keys, and said almost absent-mindedly, that puts conception at about date, give or take a couple days. There it was again. The sentence that should have been nothing. The sentence that was everything. My chest tightened. The date was basically the same as before. A range, yes, but not wide enough. Not wide enough to cover the gap I couldn't stop calculating in my head. Maya glanced at me for half a second. Too quick, too nervous. My stomach dropped. I told myself I was imagining it. That couples do this. Look at each other to confirm what they already know. But the look wasn't agreement. It was worry. The way someone looks at you when they're waiting to see if you've noticed the crack in the floor. I forced a smile, made the right noises, let Dr. Chen print another blurry photo. We thanked her, scheduled the next visit, left. In the elevator, Mia leaned against me and said, we have a grape now. Her voice was cheerful, practiced. Yeah, I said, but my voice cracked just enough that I felt her stiffen against me. We went home. She napped again. I sat at the kitchen table, ultrasound photo in front of me, laptop open, calculator app glowing. I'd looked at the dates. I thought about our sex life that month. I thought about my work trip, canceled last minute. About the nights I knew we were together. About the nights she said she was so tired, or had a headache. And then I thought about the weekend she'd gone to visit her friend in another city. Just a quick visit. Back Sunday night. She'd texted photos, drinks, selfies, a brunch plate. Nothing unusual. But in my head, suddenly, the timing bent and twisted. I hated myself for thinking it, for turning love into math, for reducing her smile in that brunch photo to potential evidence. But once you start the math, you can't stop. That night, she was sweet. Extra sweet. She curled against me on the couch, laughed at my dumb jokes, kissed me like she was making a promise. It should have calmed me. Instead, it made me wonder if she was trying to make me forget something she couldn't fix. The drawer with the folder called to me again. I pulled it out, stared at the date, closed it. Over and over. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I got up and sat at the kitchen table again. I Googled things I shouldn't have. Accuracy conception date ultrasound. Margin of error pregnancy dating. Can ultrasound be off by a week? The answers varied. Some said 5 days either way. Some said up to 2 weeks. But the ranges never stretched far enough to erase the possibility that gnawed at me. I heard Mia get up to pee. Pregnancy bladder, the apps had warned me. She padded back to bed, didn't notice me at the table. Or maybe she did, and chose not to say anything. When I came back, she was half asleep. She murmured, "Everything okay?" And I said, "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." She pressed her face into my chest, sighed, and fell asleep again. I stared at the ceiling for hours. The reel that had once been filled with tiny socks and Saturday pancakes now kept glitching. New images inserted themselves. Mia's phone face down, a too long pause before an answer. A friend's name I suddenly doubted. By morning, I was exhausted and brittle. She made oatmeal. I kissed her on the cheek. She smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. Or maybe mine just couldn't see it anymore. We carried on. Work, groceries, small talk. On the outside, we looked like any other expectant couple. On the inside, I was counting days, over and over, like a prisoner scratching lines into the wall. And for the first time, I let the thought form into actual words in my head. What if this isn't my baby? I wish I could tell you I handled it like a rational adult, that I trusted the woman I loved, ignored the calendar math, and leaned into joy. But that would be a lie. The truth is, once suspicion lodges in your brain, it becomes a parasite. You feed it, even when you swear you won't. It started with Google, always does. How accurate are conception dates? Ultrasound conception estimate off by how much? Conception date calculator reliable? The answers gave me nothing and everything. Some said ultrasounds are most accurate in the first trimester, give or take 5 to 7 days. Some said up to 10. Others said the human body doesn't care about your math. But the range never stretched far enough. The window always seemed to leave a gap big enough for another man to slip into. I hated myself for thinking that. But I kept scrolling, clicking, reading forum threads from 10 years ago where strangers swore their husbands were the father, even though the dates didn't add up. I wanted one of them to reach through the screen, grab me by the collar, and tell me, "Stop. You're fine. You're being paranoid." Instead, every answer just fanned the fire. The weekend she'd gone out of town kept replaying in my head, supposedly visiting her friend, Kara, a harmless trip. She'd shown me photos, brunch pancakes, a goofy selfie with Kara, a skyline shot from the hotel. But here's the thing. When you stop trusting, every memory mutates. I started asking myself dumb questions. Why did she only take one group photo the whole weekend? Why was there no Kara in the brunch photo, just Mia's plate and a mimosa? Why did she text me goodnight earlier than usual both nights? I told myself I was insane. I told myself she had no reason to lie. But my brain kept whispering, unless she did. I never went through her phone before. We had that kind of relationship. Open, easy, no need for snooping. But one night, while she was showering, her phone buzzed on the counter. I stared at it. It was Kara. Or at least that's what the name said. A simple text. "Can't wait for the next time." My heart thudded. My brain screamed, "It's nothing. Kara's her friend. It's normal." But the parasite whispered, "Or she changed the name." I didn't unlock it. I put it back down like it was radioactive. But the seed had sprouted. I sat down with a calendar one night while Mia was asleep. I marked the doctor's estimated conception date. Then I marked the days we'd been together. Then I marked the weekend she was away. The overlap gnawed at me. I remembered her texts that weekend. So tired. Long day. Going to bed early. The timestamp said 9:45. But when I checked my own phone history, I saw I'd been scrolling until midnight, and she'd been online. Little green dot glowing. Who was she talking to? Kara? Or? The more I looked, the more I saw. She was careful around me now, overly careful, extra affectionate, quick to kiss me, to reassure me. But there was something rehearsed in it, like she was making sure I didn't look too closely. She avoided certain topics, too. When I brought up that weekend away, she brushed it off with vague comments. No stories, no anecdotes. Just, it was nice. Good to see Kara. End of subject. The old Mia would have given me a play-by-play, complete with Kara's embarrassing moments and dumb inside jokes. Now? Nothing. The spiral peaked one night when I couldn't sleep. I got out of bed, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. I typed Kara's name into social media. There she was, posting memes, photos, casual life stuff. Then I scrolled back to the weekend in question. Nothing. No photos with Mia. No mention of a visit. Just a status about working late and a blurry shot of her cat. My chest turned to ice. I refreshed 3 times, hoping I'd missed something. But no. No trip. No brunch. No selfies. The story Mia had told me suddenly felt like a painting where half the colors had been scrubbed out. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark, and stared at nothing. I didn't want to believe it. But the math, the dates, the missing friend visit, they all lined up in a way that made me feel sick. The question was no longer, what if this isn't my baby? The question was, How do I prove it? By the time the third appointment rolled around, I was a wreck, hiding in plain sight. To anyone else, we looked like the couple you want to be. Expectant, happy, glowing with possibility. But under the smile, my chest was a vice. Every congratulations felt like a cruel joke, only I knew the punchline too. I told myself I'd wait. Wait until after the appointment. Wait until I had more proof. Wait until I wasn't so tired I was hallucinating timelines on the backs of receipts. But the truth is, you never feel ready to accuse the person you love of destroying your life. You either do it or you don't. And one night, I did. It was a Thursday. Mia was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching some mindless show. I was in the chair across from her, pretending to scroll on my phone, but actually rehearsing sentences in my head. The words all sounded wrong. Too sharp, too vague, too cruel, too cowardly. There's no script for this kind of thing. Finally, I just said it. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. She muted the TV, turned to me. Okay, I swallowed. That weekend you went to see Kara. My voice cracked. Did you? Her eyes flickered just for a second. It was enough. Of course, she said, too quickly. Because, I said, and now the words tumbled out in a rush. I looked at her posts. She didn't mention a visit. No photos. Nothing. And the conception date the doctor gave us. My throat closed. I forced it out. It doesn't line up, Mia. The room went dead quiet. She stared at me, wide-eyed. Then she laughed. Not a funny laugh, a defense laugh. You're stalking my friend's Facebook. You're calculating dates like some investigator? Her voice was high, frantic. Yes, I snapped. Because something doesn't add up, and I need to know if this baby is mine. The last word cracked open the silence like glass breaking. Her face crumpled. She covered it with her hands. And in that moment, I knew. She whispered it. It was one night. My stomach lurched. One night, she said again, as if repetition could shrink it. I was drunk. We fought. I felt stupid. I felt lonely. It was no one. It was nothing. It was a mistake. I stared at her like she was a stranger in my living room. Who? Silence. Who, Mia? Finally. She said a name. Not someone I knew well. A coworker. A face I'd seen at a party once, whose hand I'd shaken, who I'd forgotten immediately. Not forgotten. Now. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat back, like I'd been hit so hard my body forgot how to move. You were going to let me raise his kid, I said quietly. She shook her head violently. No. I don't even know if it's not yours. It could be. It probably is. I wanted it to be. I told myself it was. You lied, I said. Tears poured down her face. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. I thought if I pretended, if I pushed it down, it would go away. Her words bounced off me. I couldn't feel them. All I felt was the calendar burning in my head, the ultrasound photos on the fridge like mocking Polaroids. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I lay on the futon in the half-emptied office, staring at the ceiling. The bookshelf I'd built for a child who might not be mine, looming in the corner like a cruel joke. I thought about love, loyalty, betrayal, biology. About vows we hadn't made yet but had already broken. By morning, I knew I couldn't unhear what she'd said. The truth had slipped out, raw and ugly. And once it's out, you can't stuff it back in. The next step was unavoidable, a paternity test. And with that thought, the spiral shifted into something colder. Not suspicion, not paranoia. Proof. When people say the bottom fell out, they don't capture the way it really feels. It's not sudden. It's a slow collapse, like the floorboards under you were rotting for years and finally gave way. That's what the days after Mia's confession were like. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I just told her straight. We're doing a test. Her face went white. She nodded, too fast. Okay, fine. Yes, let's do it. Then you'll see it's yours. It has to be. But her voice cracked on the last line, and I felt the ground tilt again. We scheduled it. A non-invasive prenatal test. It wasn't cheap, but money was the last thing I cared about. I needed truth. The waiting period was a hell I didn't know existed. 2 weeks, 14 days of living in limbo, pretending life was normal while silently calculating whether every baby kick I felt under my palm belonged to me or to some stranger I hated without even knowing. We couldn't keep it secret, not for long. My sister noticed first. She came over, saw the tension in the air, the way Mia avoided my eyes. She cornered me in the kitchen. "What's going on?" She whispered. I broke. I told her everything. Her face twisted in horror, then fury. She cheated? While trying for a baby? My sister's voice was sharp, dangerous. "Are you kidding me?" She wanted to tell our parents. I begged her not to. Not yet. But secrets leak. And within days, everyone knew. My mother called me, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, what are you going to do?" I didn't know. Mia's family found out too. Her mother called me crying, begging me to understand it was a mistake. Her father left me a voicemail that was basically an apology on Mia's behalf, full of shame and stuttering silences. Everyone had an opinion. Stay. Leave. Wait. Forgive. Fight. I wanted them all to shut up. Our apartment turned toxic. Every object was a landmine. The ultrasound photos on the fridge made me want to tear the whole door off. The bookshelf in the would-be nursery mocked me. Even Mia's slippers by the couch looked like a crime scene photo. We stopped talking except about logistics, bills, groceries, the test results. Every other sentence turned into an argument or into silence, which was worse. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at me with this desperate, pleading look, like she was begging me to say something that would fix it. But there was nothing left to say. The envelope came on a Tuesday. Plain, white, clinical. No one should be able to destroy or rebuild a life with a single sheet of paper, but that's how it works. I sat at the table with it in front of me. Mia sat across, pale, shaking. I opened it. Read. Once. Twice. A third time because my brain refused to process. The results were clear. The baby was not mine. My hands went numb. The paper slipped to the table. Mia sobbed, collapsed forward, begging. I'm sorry. I love you. It meant nothing. Please, we can still." But her words blurred. All I could see was the empty future. The reel of tiny socks and Saturday pancakes, shredded. That night, I packed a bag. Clothes, toothbrush, charger. That's all. Mia clung to me at the door, crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Don't go, please. Don't leave me. I need you. The baby needs..." I pried her hands off me. My voice came out like gravel. "It's not my baby." And then I walked out. The fallout didn't stop there. Friends took sides. Some said I was cruel for abandoning a pregnant woman. Others said I was a fool to stay as long as I did. My phone buzzed with texts from numbers I didn't want to see. "You're stronger than me. I can't believe it. She must be destroyed." I stayed on my sister's couch for a while. Then I got a sublet. I tried to go to work like nothing had happened, but every email felt pointless. Every conversation felt shallow. Nights were the worst. Alone in a borrowed bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last year. Wondering how I missed it. Wondering how long she'd been lying. Wondering if love had ever been real, or if I'd been living in a carefully staged play. The fallout wasn't just losing Mia. It was losing the life I thought I was stepping into. The father I thought I'd become. The family I thought I'd build. It was grief, but not for a death. Grief for a life that never existed. The day I walked out of our apartment, I thought I was making a single choice. Leaving Mia, leaving the baby that wasn't mine, leaving the wreckage of a relationship I couldn't salvage. But in reality, I was stepping into a whole new kind of hell. One where the grief didn't just hit once. It hit in waves, over and over, from every direction. It's strange, the things that haunt you. It wasn't the big stuff, like losing our nursery plans or the ultrasound pictures. It was stupid, tiny details. The prenatal vitamins in the cabinet, the ginger tea in the pantry, the half-assembled bookshelf in the corner of that second bedroom. I couldn't walk past a baby aisle in Target without feeling like I was suffocating. Even sounds got me. The ding of a calendar reminder for an appointment I no longer planned to attend. The muffled chime of Mia's text tone when my phone accidentally replayed an old message. I wasn't just losing her, I was losing a whole parallel life. For weeks, I kept waiting for a knock on the door, for a call from a lawyer, for paperwork saying I owed child support even though I wasn't the father. That's the nightmare, right? Raising someone else's kid, paying for someone else's betrayal. Thankfully, the paternity test cleared me. Legally, I had no obligations. But that didn't erase the weight in my chest, the feeling that I'd abandoned someone, even if that someone wasn't mine. My family was unequivocal. My sister, my parents, they were furious on my behalf. My dad said, "You did the right thing, son. You can't build a life on a lie." My mom cried and said she couldn't believe Mia had done it, that she treated her like a daughter. Mia's family, though. That was a different story. Her mom called me sobbing, begging me to forgive her, to find it in your heart to raise the baby anyway. Her father sent a letter, actual paper, actual ink, telling me that real love means stepping up, no matter what. I didn't respond. And then there were the mutual friends. Some cut ties with Mia, others cut ties with me. Some tried to stay neutral, which really just meant awkward silence when both our names came up. It was like a divorce without the paperwork. I tried to go back to normal life, but nothing felt normal. Work was a blur. I'd stare at spreadsheets until the numbers turned into static. I stopped going out. Even small talk with coworkers felt like a lie. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake replaying every conversation, every kiss, every time Mia had said, "I love you," with that warm, soft look in her eyes. Was it all fake? Or was she telling the truth, but just also lying in parallel? That's the part people don't get about betrayal. It's not just the act itself. It's the way it retroactively poisons every memory. You don't know which parts were real and which parts were theater. And after a while, you start to wonder if you'll ever be able to trust your own judgment again. The lowest point came 2 months after I left. I was walking downtown and passed a couple with a stroller. The dad leaned down, kissed his baby's forehead, and kept walking like it was the most natural thing in the world. I had to duck into an alley because I couldn't breathe. I sat on the cold pavement, head between my knees, and sobbed like a child. I wanted that. I'd thought I had that. And now it was gone. It wasn't one moment that turned things around. It was dozens of small, quiet choices. Answering my sister's texts instead of ignoring them. Going to therapy, even when I didn't feel like talking. Letting friends drag me out for a drink, even when I wanted to hide. Therapy was brutal, but necessary. I learned that grief doesn't just belong to death. It belongs to betrayal, too. That I wasn't weak for feeling broken. That I didn't have to figure out what Mia meant. I only had to figure out what I meant for myself. Slowly, I started to rebuild. Not in big leaps, but in tiny steps. Cooking a meal. Sleeping through the night. Laughing at a dumb joke. Months later, Mia sent me a long email. She told me she had the baby. That she was raising her alone, with her family's support. That she still thought about me every day. That she wished she could undo what she did. I didn't reply. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was because there was nothing left to say. Her story had forked off from mine, permanently. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and for the other person, is let the silence hold what words never can. If you asked me now what I learned, I'd say this. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your sense of reality. And rebuilding isn't about getting over it. It's about learning to live with the cracks, to build something new on fractured ground. I'll always carry the ghost of that little blueberry, that little grape, that imagined child who was never mine. But I'll also carry the strength of knowing I walked through fire and came out the other side. Not whole, not the same, but alive.